Caution, this episode of Bullet Heaven HD features gameplay footage that may not be suitable for photosensitive people. Proceed in this episode with extreme care, especially if you have a history of epilepsy or seizures. When it comes to shooting games over the last 3 or 4 decades or so, there's no more common template than that of the original Space Invaders, originally seeing released to arcades all the way back in 1978. Not surprisingly, the formula still works extremely well, with several games such as Titan Attacks, Hangeki, and even new entries in the Space Invaders franchise seeing release in the modern gaming landscape.
One such title is Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition, released to Steam in September of 2015. This particular title is, in itself, an alternate pixel-style version of an existing vanilla version of the game titled, simply, Hyperspace Invaders II. We've already taken a look at several Space Invaders-style games on Bullet Heaven so far, including several actual Space Invader games, and in true modern style, there are different hooks that make Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition quite a bit different than the Space Invader-style games you may be used to. Let's take a closer look.
In Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition, players square off against waves of pixelized enemies in a stage-by-stage fashion. Each one of these stages has an underlying BGM that changes how the waves behave and move. Usually, the higher the beats per minute, the more aggressive the opposition.
Control is pretty simple. Move your little yellow guy around with either the keyboard, left analog stick, or D-pad. Players have access to full range movement in the first 9 stages, which is uncharacteristic of an Invader-style game, though a 10th classic stage features fixed lefty-righty only control. Firing is automatic, for the most part. The only fire control players will have is activating a powerful beam attack, which also slows movement down. Once again, things change in the classic mode style in Stage 10, allowing players direct control of firing.
That's seriously all there is to the controls here, making for a pretty simple game. Things get only a bit more complicated with the addition of souls and power-ups. Defeating enemies will release souls which your ship picks up for overall weapon power to be increased. Your main shots will always fire forward and their size and power increases with level.
Hitting the enemies that approach from the sides is a bit trickier, and that's where the brightly shining power-ups come in. When collected, your ship will very briefly fire angled shots that more easily hit the foes to each side. These power-ups happen frequently, especially with a bunch of enemy kills, so a continued chain and long-term use of these angled power-ups are a common thing.
Weapon power-ups also affect this style of attack, adding additional shots and angles and even resulting in rebounding bullets for even easier enemy kills. In addition, the focused beam also grows in size and power according to the amount of souls collected, the higher the better. Continued use will reduce its power as the counter in the corner decreases with heavy penalties resulting from death. This beam is helpful in nullifying most enemy bullets and can be used in tiny, short bursts effectively to clear bullets away. In addition, your wide-shot power-ups won't fire when this beam is activated.
Each stage has an end which corresponds to the end of the musical selection in the BGM. Some stages can go on for 10 minutes, while others take considerably less time. Each stage also has a kind of central theme which is outlined when selecting them. One stage may have emphasis on destroying wall-type barriers, while others have a ton of mini-bosses. Others more or less say that they're going to be the hardest thing you'll ever face in the game.
All of these features are applicable to stages 1 to 9, but in stage 10, players go up against a 100-wave classic Invader-style setup. Clearing a wave gives way to more invaders. Power-ups still exist, but change the basic shot into a column-busting mega shot briefly. The classic Invader-style UFO also drop power-ups as well. Souls are also collected in this mode as well, but accuracy is also a pretty big emphasis here. If you miss with one of your shots, you'll be penalized, and as a result, your multiplier will fall.
Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition is a pretty simple game that is easy enough to get into. The challenge is being able to withstand the onslaught until your weapons grow to a power level that more easily deals with the chaos, especially when the wide shots can hit the whole top of the screen. Once the threshold is reached, getting extends to last to the end of the stage is pretty easy to do, especially when the scoring mounts up with stupid high multipliers, which we'll take a look at in scoring.
Each of the stages in Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition are scored independently of each other, much like other games we've looked at, such as Bang.io, Jamestown, and Symphony. This is usually reserved for games with a much higher number of stages, but in the case of Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition, it works well.
Each stage has a leaderboard for local play and online scores as well, allowing players to see how they stack up after each round. You may not even need to clear the stage to get up there with a long enough run and a big enough multiplier. Here's how to get the highest scores.
The souls you'll collect will enable a multiplier at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Again, using the laser function will drop this multiplier as you use it, and death cuts the multiplier down dramatically.
There is also a chain counter that climbs as you defeat enemies without pause. The chain counter can easily get into the thousands without a lot of mess or fuss with a good, solid run. Obviously, the higher the better.
At stage end or game over, a multiplied bonus is applied for the player's accuracy, max chain, souls collected, and how many lives are left in the stock. These bonuses can really get up there, and become very helpful in cracking the online top 10 leaderboards on each stage.
All in all, the scoring elements are simple enough so that players can keep focus on surviving the intense enemy bombardments that they'll face throughout each stage, while still being able to boost their scores way up.
If you like games that are liable to make your eyes bleed, well, here you go. One thing that is actually sorely lacking in this game is an epilepsy warning. We literally have friends that would be completely incapacitated with these visuals in no time at all. We even had to add one to this episode for the very first time in Bullet Heaven history.
The harsh colors and intense strobing of all of the visuals is quite a bit of a sensory overload. Everything from the menus, to the invaders, to the multipliers, backgrounds, even status messages are flickery and headache-inducing, even in short bursts. With less intensity, we're sure the visual design would be much more pronounced, but as it stands, while the pixelized enemies look pretty neat, albeit a little derpy, with all kinds of variety, they are almost kind of invisible against the overload of flashing lights, blurs, and bloom.
The sound in Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition is a bit of a mixed bag as well. The music here is definitely not going to be to everyone's taste, with an overdriven quote-unquote happy hardcore techno style that has no shame in topping 300 beats per minute. Music that fast lacks the kind of finesse that we enjoy in our BGM, and it ends up more or less just kind of sounding like cacophonous noise to us.
Still, there is definitely an audience that will dig the tunes present in Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition. Meanwhile, the sound effects work well despite the lackluster BGM, with fitting effects for shots, death, collisions, bonuses, selections, and so forth.
In the end, Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition works fairly well in the gameplay and scoring categories, and the Steam achievements add a layer of replayability. However, it falls hard with its presentation in ways that can actually affect how well the game can be played. But how does it stack up? Let's take a look. Controlling your ship is easy enough, but the flashing visuals will make collisions more frequently than you'd think. The visuals really do seem to affect the controls.
Both analog and D-pad movement works well on any controller you choose to use.
There's a decent bit of legitimate challenge in Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition, but again, the visuals can make things a lot harder than anticipated.
The Music's a Challenge hook is a neat feature though.
With 10 stages between 3 and 10 minutes long and beyond, the stages here almost overstay their welcome.
There's still plenty to play though, if you can withstand the constant visual strain.
Decent pixel designs give way to horrible headache-inducing backdrops that had us walking away with killer migraines.
This is absolutely a game to be avoided by photosensitive individuals.
There's definitely an audience out there for the kind of happy hardcore hyperfast techno featured in Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition, but we're not part of it.
At the very least, the sound effects work fairly well here.
Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition is playable enough, but being an Invader-style game that isn't even the first version of the same concept, ingenuity is low.
Over-flashy visuals and unreasonably fast music isn't the kind of ingenuity this game type needs, but the power-up system does feel at least a little fresh.
Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition looks good on paper, and it plays pretty well on the whole. But the visuals are so harsh it's hard to keep track of even if you aren't a particularly photosensitive person. If you can withstand the audio-visual loudness, it still works. Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition gets a 3.25 out of 5. You can get Hyperspace Invaders II Pixel Edition on Steam today for about $5 US.